Have you ever seen someone smile, just to hide their hunger? Have you ever watched a child pretend they're not hungry, because they have nothing to eat? This is the story of a boy who sat alone every day during lunch, empty-handed but full of pride. Until one day, someone noticed, and what happened next didn't just fill his stomach, it changed his life. 12-year-old Ian sat in the back corner of his classroom, quiet, careful, and often unnoticed. He was the kind of student who never caused trouble. He raised his hand only when he was sure of the answer. He smiled when spoken to. He nodded when others talked. On the outside, he looked like any other kid. But there was something no one knew, something he tried to hide every single day. His family was struggling. His father had lost his job months ago, and his mother was working double shifts just to keep the lights on. Rent was overdue, bills were piling up, some nights even dinner was uncertain, and lunch was a luxury he had quietly learned to live without. Every day when the lunch bell rang, the classroom filled with the sounds of wrappers opening, juice boxes popping, and excited chatter about snacks and treats. Kids compared sandwiches like they were trading cards. Some even complained, "Ugh, not cheese again." Meanwhile, Ion would slowly stand up, walk to the hallway water fountain and drink, just enough to trick his stomach. Then he'd return to his desk, pretend to scribble in his notebook, and wait. Sometimes his friends would call out, "Hey Ion, aren't you eating?" He'd laugh softly and reply, "Nah, I'm not hungry." It became his daily lie. Most believed him. Some didn't care enough to ask twice. But one person, one boy, kept watching. His name was Zaid. He wasn't the loudest in class or the most popular, but he was observant, and for 2 weeks straight, he noticed something others didn't. Ion never had food. Not once, Zaid would glance at him while eating his sandwich. He saw how Ion looked away whenever food was mentioned. He saw how he rubbed his stomach when he thought no one was watching. He saw the forced smile. And one day, he couldn't unsee it anymore. That morning, in the cafeteria before school started, Zaid did something unusual. He bought 2 lunches, 1 chicken wrap, 1 rice bowl, and extra fries. He carefully tucked them into his bag and went to class. When the bell rang for lunch, Ion stood up to do his usual routine. Water, notebook, silence. But this time Zaid stood up too. "Hey," Zaid called out, stopping Ion in the hallway. Ion turned, surprised. "Yeah, come sit with me today," Zaid said casually. Ion froze for a moment, confused. No one had asked him to sit with them in weeks. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. They sat at an empty table in the corner of the cafeteria. Zaid pulled out his lunchbox. Ion reached for nothing, pretending to adjust his sleeves. Then, without warning, Zaid placed one of the food boxes in front of him. Ion blinked. "What's this? Lunch?" Zaid smiled. I don't need it," Ion whispered, pushing it back gently. "I brought it for you." "Why?" Zaid paused. He could have said anything. He could have made it casual, but he didn't, "Because I know," he said softly. Ion's breath caught. "I know you haven't been eating." The words hit Ion like a wave. His throat tightened. His chest felt heavy. For weeks, he had held everything in. His hunger, his shame, his pride. He looked away, staring at the floor. "I'm fine," he mumbled. "No, you're not." Zaid replied calmly, "And that's okay." Ion's eyes filled, but he blinked fast, trying to stop the tears. "I don't want pity." "It's not pity," Zaid said. "It's friendship." Silence. No one had ever said that word to him like that. Slow, gentle, real. Before Ion could respond, a group of kids from their class walked by. They stopped at their table. "Whoa, Zaid." One of them laughed. "Did you finally get yourself a lunch, buddy?" Another smirked. "Or is he just eating your leftovers?" Ion immediately stood up, panicked. His worst fear. People noticing, people judging. But before he could walk away, Zaid stood too. "No," he said firmly. "He's my friend and we're eating together." The boys scoffed and walked off, but something shifted in that moment. Ion looked at Zaid, really looked at him. Zaid didn't look embarrassed. He wasn't uncomfortable. He wasn't doing this to look good. He was simply there for him. Slowly, Ion sat back down. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the food box. He took one small bite. Then another, and with each bite, the tightness in his chest eased just a little, but it didn't end there. because the next day Zaid brought 2 lunches again, and the next, and the next. Soon, lunch wasn't silent anymore. There was laughter, there were stories, there were jokes about teachers and silly drawings on napkins. Other students started joining their table, first out of curiosity, then out of habit. No one questioned why Zaid always had extra food. No one teased Ayan anymore. In fact, one day, another classmate brought cookies for the whole table. Someone else brought juice boxes. Slowly, that table became the warmest corner of the cafeteria. Ayan started to smile more, not the polite, forced smile he used before, but a real one, the kind that reached his eyes. One afternoon, while they were packing their bags, Ayan quietly said, "Thank you." Zaid didn't ask for what. He already knew. But Ayan continued anyway, not just for the food, for making me feel like I matter. Zaid placed a hand on his shoulder. "You always mattered. You just needed someone to remind you." Weeks passed. Things at home were still tough, but now Ayan didn't carry it alone. He had someone to talk to, someone who checked in on him, someone who noticed. One day, something unexpected happened. Ayan entered school holding a small worn-out lunchbox. It wasn't much, a half sandwich, a banana, and a little packet of chips. But to him it was everything. He sat at their usual table and placed the lunchbox in front of Zaid. "What's this?" Zaid asked. "My turn." Ayan smiled. Zaid grinned. "Deal." They shared that lunch, and it wasn't about who had more or less. It wasn't about giving or receiving. It was about friendship, pure, simple, and powerful. From that day on, sharing wasn't an act of charity. It was an act of love. A year later, when the school held an assembly about kindness, teachers shared different stories from around the campus. But one story stood out. One about a boy who noticed hunger and chose action. The entire auditorium clapped. Zaid looked over at Ayan. Ayan didn't clap. He stood and hugged him instead. Kindness doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply slides a lunchbox across the table. You may not end hunger in the world, but you can end it for someone today. Be the one who notices. Be the one who shares.